Today's guest on the What Fuels You podcast is John DeFeo. John is the president and CEO of Rapid NanoSensor, president of Venture Advisors. Previously, he served as the chairman, president, and CEO of CoCo Communications. John is a seven-time CEO with more than 40 years of leadership experience in strategic planning, marketing and sales, customer care, Six Sigma, lean manufacturing, and product and business development. His experience touches nearly every facet of telecommunications and medical device industries. He has extensive experience in complex capital financings, having raised more than $1.7 billion in private venture and public markets. John attended Temple University, where he received his BBA in Business Administration and AT in Electrical Engineering. Welcome, John. So good to see you. Thank you so much for joining.
Nice to see you.
I'm so glad that we're doing this. I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions. What's your favorite country that you've ever visited?
I think Denmark, because I was there at a very early point of my career, and I had to learn how Denmark worked. And I learned how to drive in Europe. I learned how to stay and work with a technical team and a manufacturing team. So Denmark is probably one of those foundational experiences.
Yeah. Tell me about, I know that you're a commercial pilot, which is super cool and exciting. Is there a plane that you've always wanted to fly? Like if you could fly any plane.
I own a four-place Mooney. I'm a Mooney-iac.
I don't know what that means. It sounds pretty cool.
Moonies are the Porsche of smaller general aviation aircraft. And when I was working at US West, I had a really good year one year in the cell phone business. I had a lot of good years, but one exceptional year. And my boss asked me, well, what would you like, since I can't pay you anymore, I can't give you any more money, what would you like? And I said, I'd like to go to jet school to fly my corporate airplane that I use for business. And he said yes, and I went to jet school.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
I learned how to fly the jet airplane that was my aircraft that was assigned to me as an executive at the company.
And how far have you flown? Like, can you fly it far?
Oh yeah, I've flown to Europe. I've flown to.
Oh my gosh! Oh, you're hardcore. That's insane.
Yeah, I've had wonderful flying experiences, and still, having an airplane that sits here in Seattle, my wife and I enjoy using the airplane to go wonderful places.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I'm curious. I don't know if you're a reader. I'm guessing that you are, but I don't know how because you're so busy. But is there a book that you most often recommend? Or you can answer this. Is there a book that you're currently reading that you're excited about?
Well, it's hard to say a book. Usually it's a book that I recommend that is specific to the person I'm talking to. There isn't I would say, there are topics that I recommend people understand. One is total quality management, Six Sigma, they call it lean now. And there's a whole series of great reads in that area.
Okay, this one's going to be hard. Would you rather spend time in the mountains, on the water, or in the air?
Oh, that's a dead tie. I love my time skiing and love the mountains, and have skied all through Europe and skied all across the US for sure. And I love the Pacific Northwest is the most spectacular boating area in the world. And I have done boating elsewhere in the world and really enjoy the Pacific Northwest the best. And the airplane gets you from A to B very quickly.
Is it the kind of thing where flying is just a mode of transportation, or are you kind of in your happy place, kind of zenned out while you're flying?
Oh, I'm very in my happy place. Looking out the window of the airplane, all those classes in physics I had to take, you can see the physics looking out the window of the airplane. You can see how the air is going over the wings and how the airplane behaves. And looking at the weather and all the weather courses I've had to take. It really does tie a big piece of me together.
Oh, it sounds like a dream to have that freedom. It really does. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm an extrovert.
Okay, you can either answer what is the first concert that you ever attended or your favorite concert that you've ever attended?
I went to see Liza Minnelli
Mm,
in New Jersey, and she was amazing. And that one always stuck with me. I've
well,
been to
she's a
lots of concerts.
phenomenal, yeah,
Yeah,
she's a great,
amazing, amazing talent.
she's an entertainer for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, if this one's my last one. If there was a book or movie written about your life, what would it be called?
Oh, it'd be James Bond. If you pick any of the James Bond um, movies, they look more like things I've gotten to experience. I've been to a lot of the sets that he um, around the movie. So yeah, James Bond is probably my best connection.
Getting into it, like where did you learn all this? Where are you from? Tell me about your parents, the whole nine.
My mom and dad are from Philadelphia, and I was born in Philadelphia. And Dad's greatest wish was that he wanted to own a home in New Jersey, right? So he and my mom bought a very nice house in Audubon, New Jersey. And so I left Philadelphia when I was 11 with them, and went and moved to Audubon. And Audubon was the perfect Happy Days school and high school and setting. It was a wonderful place, and I met so many terrific people. Dad was a Army senior non-commissioned officer in the Second World War. Landed in Normandy on D-Day on Utah Beach. And some years later, I got to tour Utah Beach because I wanted to see what Dad experienced. And he had a career at RCA building electronic devices of all sorts. And he shared a lot of that electronic understanding with me. And that really looked pretty interesting. So I had an early connection with electronics and decided that was probably going to be a career path for me. And I was also always interested in building things. I love to build things. So my energy was always around creating something.
And tell me about your mom.
And well, Mom was a manager at a local bank, and so she had really good hours, and she took very good care of me. I could not have had a more spectacular mother ever. And unfortunately, my dad passed away when I was 13.
Oh, wow.
And it was just Mom and I. So I had to take over a lot of the responsibilities of the house and look after her while she looked after me. And so we were really a great team, and we could do all kinds of things. And she had great skills, great interpersonal skills, she read everything. And really, a lot of the things that I was successful with was because of her guidance early on. One of the things she said after my dad passed away is that she would introduce me to people that I should get to know. And so I had engineers and machinists and carpenters and plumbers and all kinds of different career people that I got to know. And each of them were wonderful in sharing some of their background with me. And so I learned things from all of these different people, and that really had a lot to do with my interests and how I became the entrepreneur that I am today.
I love that. And also that you got the benefit of learning from your dad at a young age, kind of the curiosity around like tinkering and discovery of things through like tactile, touching and opening and playing. With most people that I know that are interested in figuring things out, that's how they describe it. They just like want to tinker and figure stuff out through that.
Everything I ever came in contact with take apart.
Yeah. It's funny how many people that have kind of your similar background, whether it's like electrical engineers that I've had on the podcast, or even software development engineers, talk about that side of their brain. I don't even know where it comes from, but it is that curiosity of wanting to like open it and look behind it and figure it out. And it also sounds like your mom valued, I guess, being almost like a student of the world just as much as a student of kind of school and books? Or was it also a message of like results oriented grades?
Yeah, she encouraged me that I could do anything. And she really, even though many of the interests that I had, the idea of learning to fly, that no one in our family were pilots. No one in the family were boaters. And I went to work for a boating store when I was 15. And I learned a lot about boating, and it was really fun.
Yeah, and you were just curious and asked a lot of questions. And were you a good student? And were you kind of disciplined around that, or what, did it come naturally?
I was a good student. It was more fun to me to work than it was to get all A's in college. I got a lot of A's and a lot of B's, but it was mostly because I was working, 30 hours a week
Yeah.
for 5 years. So that work experience really, really shaped me
Yeah.
because I saw so much at the company.
Did you also pursue music and sports and art and stuff, or were you more like, I'm about learning the world through work?
I think my work was my principal activity. I learned to ski when I was, I guess, 16. And I took flying lessons, I guess. I started flying when I was like 21 or 22.
Wow.
And I had done boating in my teens, thanks to the company I worked for at the time. And my mom introduced me to the company, and they hired me as a mechanic because I had good mechanical skills. And then because of the owner's son and I were close in age, he was a lot of fun to be around.
Yeah, kind of took you under his wing.
Yeah.
Tell me about Temple University. How did you choose that school, and who were the people besides your mom that were influencing and guiding your decisions at that time?
Well, mom had gone to business college, and her brother and sister had gone to business college. They had all completed 2 years of business college. Some of my cousins were professionals, so I saw that the professional life was a good place to be, and I liked what they experienced in their work environments. And Temple is to Philadelphia what UW is to Seattle. Most of the people who have degrees in Philadelphia got their degrees at Temple University.
Yeah, and you studied business there.
I studied engineering first, and then after I got my engineering degree, I rolled my credits over to the business school, and then got a business degree.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of exposure did you get there to teachers or business leaders that would like ultimately influence business decisions that you made later in life?
There were good mentors at college. I had a number of professors who, I remember one early crisis. I started at Temple, and after I got there, I guess 2 semesters, they tripled my tuition because it became a state school, and it was a private college, and it became a hybrid private college state university. And as a result, my tuition went up 3 times. And at that moment, I had the challenge of saying, how can I afford this? And should I go back and go to college in New Jersey? And I thought about becoming a teacher. And the professors at the engineering school said I should really find a way to raise the money to stay here. And I did.
How did you do that?
Well, I was fortunate. At the end of my freshman year in engineering school, I went to an electronics trade show in New York City, and I met an engineer who was in a trade show booth, and he said he was looking for a junior engineer to work at the company. So would I come down and have an interview? And I did, and I got the job.
So did you work there a lot during college? Like how many hours a week were you working?
I worked about 30 hours a week, and then full-time in the summer.
Wow.
So it was and they were very flexible about letting me set my hours around my class schedule. And the engineer who hired me was the owner of the company's son. So he was going to take over the business at some point, at which he did. And then, so he and I, the company owned a 73-foot sailboat. And since I knew something about boating from my years in working at a boat store in New Jersey, I helped them fix a lot of the things on the boat. So I became part of the Navy at the company.
That's perfect. You also mentioned when we were kind of catching up before that you had some exposure to Young Presidents Organization. And for those listening that don't know about the organization, that's how I first got introduced to you. How has that organization influenced you? And that's when you first got exposed, was during college.
Right. The fast forward to this is in engineering school, I only had one elective, and I took a business course. And I was so wowed by the business philosophy. And there were only 5 of us in the class. And Dr. Shometz really, really helped me see how exciting the business world was really about. And as part of that, so when the time came after engineering school, I was going to go to work for DuPont. I had accepted a job at DuPont to work as an engineer, and the idea came into mind that I should really take all my credits from my engineering degree and go to business school. So I applied, was accepted in business school, and just continued at Temple for business. And during my time at business school, they had seminars right after lunch several days a week. And I used to go to those seminars, and very interesting people would present their business story, what they were doing, what the product was, the technologies. It was wonderful talks. And as I would talk to the people after their talks were finished, I found a great number of them were members of YPO, Young Presidents Organization. And it so impressed me. I said, someday, if I have the credentials, I would love to join YPO. And sure enough, when I got to Seattle, it was an opportunity, and I qualified to join YPO.
Yeah. So for those listening, it's an international organization for presidents. You can be either a founder or somebody who's like a hired gun or a family member who's running a company for a certain level of revenue and certain number of employees and or both, to have a network of people who have shared, I guess, interests and mindsets.
Right.
And, yeah.
We talk about it as the DNA of the organization. There are 30,000 members worldwide. And I think YPO is in 140 countries. And when you travel internationally for YPO, they have universities you can attend to hear the best of the best in thinking. It's amazing when you meet other YPOers how much we are all alike. The selection process for YPO really does connect everyone. So whether you meet somebody in Turkey or in France or in the UK or in Asia, it's amazing how similar we are.
Mm-hmm. And how long have you been a member?
I joined in '88.
Wow. Well, your history, just in researching you and talking to you a little bit before recording, is there is a theme here. You know, it's about building products, innovating. I know you started out your career in medical devices out of school. What drew you to that? Because you really had the pick of the litter. You could have gone in any direction, especially with an engineering and business degree. How did you go medical devices, and what did you learn there?
I was in a volunteer rescue squad in Audubon, New Jersey. I spent almost 8 years as a volunteer for the Audubon rescue. And as part of that, I had to take a lot of first aid training. So I learned some basic anatomy and physiology. It really was something that I learned about. And when the job headhunter found me and suggested that I come out to this medical device company in Pennsylvania, and eventually I took the job there. I applied for their new product development person, the director of new product development, and they said, you're awfully young to take on that task, but would you take, we have a position open for marketing for advertising public relations, and you have experience in that. Why don't you start there? And I said, okay. So I took the advertising sales promotion job. And about a year and a half later, I was promoted to the director of new product development.
Perfect. I love that all these things early on in your career, it's like, you're so young and you're doing these things, and even being recruited by a headhunter so early, you're doing kind of all these things. And was there a lens through which you were making these decisions? And were there any regrets along the way? I know you went from there to Chicago to Abbott. Was it like, oh, that sounds fun and a new adventure, or were you being very calculated and strategic with those decisions?
Well, I think leaving Philadelphia was a challenge. It really was a hard idea because I was working for this medical device company. The other half of the medical device company was an aviation company. It was Narco Scientific. They manufactured navigation equipment for light airplanes. So I learned how to fly in the flying club that was organized in the aviation part of the company. But I eventually said I should go do this, and I did. My mom supported me, even though she didn't like the idea that I was not going to be in Philadelphia anymore.
Sure.
But she always thought I'd come back.
Well, yeah. I left for almost 17 years out of Seattle, and then did come back. My parents were like shocked. And yeah.
Yeah, it's always sometimes funny how that all works out. And
you just never know. Yeah.
And Abbott was a terrific company to work for, a very big corporation, wonderful programs, great people, learned a lot in that environment, did a lot for them. I was responsible for a couple of manufacturing companies outside of Cincinnati. So I eventually bought an airplane in Chicago, and I could fly the airplane down to Cincinnati twice a month to do business for Abbott, and that was really wonderful. So then I got recruited by a headhunter to come to work for GE Medical Systems in Milwaukee. So I took the job at GE, moved up to Milwaukee, and built new medical devices. Mostly the company's product line that I was the senior marketing person. I ran the marketing department for the gamma cameras, which are devices that read radionuclides that are injected into patients, and that it allows the camera to take a picture of where the radionuclide travels in the body. And so I learned a lot about physiology, anatomy, and physics to deal with the nuclear medicine. And so after about a little over a year of leading the marketing position, they offered me the worldwide general manager's job.
Oh my gosh. How old are you at this point? I'm just trying to do the math. I'm guessing under 30.
Yeah, I was, I'm going to say 20, maybe 26, 25.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And so I had traveled quite a bit in Europe because of this division. And because I could relate to Europe, the Danes would respect my point of view because it was connected to Europe. Yeah. And that really made a big difference. Some of the products that I led in that organization, believe it or not, many decades later are still the world leader in that category.
Really? What types of products?
Okay, the product was called the 400T. It was a camera that the image area was about, it was 400 centimeters. And GE was the world leader at that point in CAT scanning using X-ray. And I convinced the chief engineer for the CAT scanner, Dr. Adelheit, Lonnie Adelheit, to loan me one of his engineers to apply the algorithms of the camera or for the CAT scanner to a nuclear image. And he did the equations, and we built the product that would do three-dimensional imaging of a nuclear image as opposed to doing a two-dimensional image. And it was so revealing, and it made the medical use of the product that much better. And no one had thought about doing this. And that became an amazing product.
And they're still using it today.
And it's the world leader in its tomographic imaging to this day.
I mean, a lot of areas, I mean, even in cellular, which is a huge part of your success and how I know you, like reputationally, also products that are still being used. And you're we can get into that. Like, how did you transition? And given that you had so much momentum at GE Healthcare, why did you, I guess, make the switch?
Well,
to GE Electric?
The head of the president of the division, Dr. Walt Robb, sat me down and said, you might have a career here, but you need to finish all the finishing schools that we expect our executives to complete. And I said, what do you mean? I've been in manufacturing, I've been in engineering, been in sales. He said, but you didn't do it here. You got to do it here. So it took me about 3.5 years to take all the courses that I had to take. And I finished them. And when I finished them, the same Dr. Robb sat me down. He said, well, now it's time for you to go do something different. And you have a radio background. And I think we'd like you to go to the two-way radio business, the commercial radio business in Lynchburg, Virginia. And I think that would be a good fit for your skill set. And so off I went. And started over in a completely new business. And after I was there I was doing planning for the whole strategic planning for the company, but I was also running marketing, worldwide marketing. So I was, there was this cellular thing that everybody was talking about, and the company had no plan to be in the cellular business. This was 1981 and 82, I guess 82. And I said, you guys really need to be in this business. That device, that cell phone, might put you out of business. And they said, well, that's possible. I said, yeah, let me put a plan together and see if I can convince you to go into the cellular business. And sure enough, I put the plan together. I was successful in convincing them they should be in the cell business.
That's amazing. And cell phones came out in like 1983, so that overlaps.
80, well, yeah, Chicago turned on at the very end of 1983, and most of the cell phone companies built their networks out in 84. And so I joined, so it was now 1983, and the president of that division said, the medical systems people want you to come back, and they want you to run the magnetic imaging business, which would be a huge promotion, big company, big organization. And at the same time, a recruiter found me that said, we're looking for someone to come out to Seattle to build the cell phone business here in Seattle. So
wow. So you're open so much to different geographies, which makes you an attractive candidate to a recruiter.
Yes, yeah. I used to come out to the Pacific Northwest to do new product launches in the radio business. So I knew what a spectacular area this was and what a beautiful boating area it was.
Yeah.
And so I decided that the way the deal worked, I would be recruited into AT&T, and AT&T was about to break into 7 parts, the regional bell system, and there was going to be a cell company that handled 14 Western states, headquartered out of Seattle. And I knew what a great place Seattle was, and I was excited about the future of the cell phone business. So I said yes. It was in May of 1983. And we built the cell phone. This was for US West, was the parent company. And we put the company strategy together. And since I was hired as the chief marketing officer and president, and I put the plan together and sold it to my CEO and to the corporate people. And that was the business we built. So we operated, we built the first system in Seattle. And for our competitor didn't show up with a network for over 2 years later.
Who was your CEO, like that hired you?
The person who hired me was Dick Callahan. He understood state, local, and federal regulation really, really well, and how to navigate and do public policy. And as part of the cell phone business, public policy was really, really important. If you're on the Verizon system today, that was the system I built.
That's incredible.
I built eventually those 14 states, actually 15 states by that time, were acquired by Verizon. And I had wanted to become the national operator, and I put every plan I could think of in front of the US West people, and they just couldn't see that cellular was the next big thing. You know, before the internet and before Google and before social media and apps, and cellular was the first big idea that came out of America.
Oh, it was huge.
It was huge. I mean,
it was huge.
And and I was a founder of that and a pioneer that. So so Dick, one of the things I did in my marketing role was I decided that since US West only let us buy a few other markets, they said, well, if you could get the markets for nothing, if you could earn the markets without us having to pay for them, then we would do it. So I said, well, I can't do that in the US because the people in the US realize how expensive or how valuable cellular is going to be. But I could probably do it in Europe. And they said, well, if you can get a license in Europe, we support you. So I went to Europe and convinced countries to allow us to bid on systems, and we won all of the United Kingdom in '89, and then we won Hungary, we won the Czech Republic, Slovakia, we built Moscow, we built St. Petersburg. So we had a real run of international cellular. So I got to repeat. So I was running the domestic business. I was running these worldwide operations. And my boss saw that there was a big opportunity in this. Dick Callahan saw that there was a big opportunity in international, and he wanted to become the senior executive for international for all of US West. So he recommended they promote me to CEO, and which I did. That was in '85. And so I took over the cell phone business and the worldwide operation. And he moved to Denver. And
that's incredible. Would you describe that, John, as the pinnacle time of your career, like the most intense, the most exhilarating, or was it the most stressful, or kind of
it was
of all the above?
I realized this was a significant opportunity.
Yeah.
And the skills that the first 5 years I was in the cell phone business, though I was learning a lot about the cell phone, I didn't really add much in the way of experience in business skills, because my business background at that point had been pretty developed. But in 1988, US West asked me to take my cell phone company public. And when I had to go through the public offering, we started that process in 87, and the company went public in 88. And so I ran the company as a public company for about 5 years. And I
Did you enjoy that? Like when you look at the difference, because I have a few friends that have taken their companies public, and it's a whole different level of scrutiny and stress, frankly.
Yeah, it was because I was about growth, and US West in their with their shareholders,
they're about profits. Yeah,
they had about returns, right?
Yeah.
And so I was the one using cash.
Yeah.
And they were having to fund a large portion of our cash needs. And that created quite a bit of stress between, and the faster we grew, the more cash we needed. And that was very stressful with the two different agendas, because I'd go out and convince people to consider investing in our company. And at the same time, I knew that the corporate parent was more concerned about cash management. I left in 89 to focus on international. And I came back in 91. And the big decision was, do I go back to the original strategies I was using back in 89 when we were wildly successful? Or should I re-look at the business as if I was a new executive coming in? And I decided to look at the business anew and see what the company needed, and not go back to what I was doing in the past that was so successful. And that turned out to be one of the biggest accomplishments in my career, is that I built the company differently because it had different needs. And I saw new things because of my time in Europe that really we could take advantage of, and I did. And
yeah, that's super smart. Plus, in an industry that's innovating and growing so quickly, it has to be looked at differently.
Yes.
In a tech industry or cellular business, you have to look at it differently. Is it true that you had the second mobile phone in Washington?
Oh yes, I had the second phone in the Seattle area. My boss got the first one, and I got the second one. So my cell phone number is the second cell phone number ever issued in Seattle.
And you still have the same phone number?
Yes, I still have the same phone number.
We want to ask what it is, because we don't want you to get harassed. Yeah, what kind of phone do you have now? Like, are you Apple?
I'm an Apple phone user.
And do you have the 14 right now, the most recent? Do you kind of keep up?
It's one generation earlier.
Yeah.
I remember I was a big when I was in the cell business, I convinced Motorola to sell cell phones through carriers. You have to believe this story. Motorola was not going to sell phones through the carriers, the companies who were offering the service. They were going to sell the phones themselves. They had a 4,000 person sales force, and they were going to sell the cell phones. And I said, and they wouldn't take a meeting with me because they didn't want to say no to me. And I eventually convinced an executive at Motorola, and he met me in Phoenix, and on the hood of a car at a parking lot, I convinced him that we should sell cell phones. He should sell cell phones through carriers, and he took it back to Motorola, and they eventually agreed that they would allow us to sell their cell phones. I became the largest distributor of Motorola cell phones in the world.
That's crazy. I'm guessing people walking by in Phoenix, Arizona are not thinking that's what's happening in the parking lot.
Yeah, on the hood of a car.
On the hood of a car.
Yeah, I had my plan laid out.
Tell me about US Airwaves. That's that you founded that company, and that's
right.
That yes, comes out after.
Yes,
because you left.
Now, US West wanted me to be the chief technology officer for the cable business.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted me to build that company.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, there's a new spectrum that's going to be awarded by the federal government, and I'm only going to have one more chance at doing that. So I think I'm going to leave US West and start a new cellular company based on all the experience I had. And so I did. I started the company, and I recruited a number of people to come work for me from that were with me at US West. And I had to go out as an entrepreneur and raise venture capital, and was successful raising, in today's dollars, I would have raised about $15 million in venture capital. And it was Kleiner Perkins, which is probably the most
it's like
famous,
the most
yes,
prestigious for sure.
Most recent, yes. I was
Yes.
I was an advisor to Motorola.
Mm.
And when they would have a question about wireless or something,
Right.
called. So I would help them.
Yeah.
And so they agreed to have a meeting with me because we were friends. And I went in to give the presentation on the cell phone business that I wanted to start. So I sat down with two of their most senior people who are world famous, even to this day, in the venture business. And they looked at me and they said, we've already decided not to do this, but you're a friend of the company. Why don't you tell us what you have in mind? So I was, going to put my business plan up on the screen. And they said, no. There's a whiteboard up there. Take a magic marker and tell us how you're going to do this. So on the whiteboard, I laid out the entire business plan. And they thought about it for a couple of days and said, we're going to do it.
And what was the business plan exactly? What was the business model?
The business model was a talk and listen business, but it had a lot of pieces in it about very successful ways of distributing the phones and doing phone distribution through retail and emphasizing portable phones. And because we saw that the portable was going to be the future. And since I knew something about Europe and the UK network, which was designed for portables, I would do that in the US. And that convinced Kleiner Perkins to back me. And then I raised, over a year period, I raised another $240 million, which would be over $1 billion in today's dollar.
Oh my gosh.
And so I did a Series A offering, and then I did a Series B, and that gave me enough capital to go to the auction to buy the spectrum. So we got to the auction, and we started real well, and basically they screwed up the auction, and nobody was successful.
Yeah, it sounds like from just listening that this was your first challenge. And how did you face that, and how did you just kind of like pick yourself up again and keep on
It was
charging?
really disappointing. I mean, to work that, I had never worked as hard as I did ever to raise that kind of money.
Yeah,
and
that's
people
a big feat.
And the people who said yes, it was a who's who in American business. Motorola made an investment. Hyundai made a major investment. Qualcomm was an investor. It was a MCI. It was a who's who group of companies, and each of them I would negotiate to use pieces of their infrastructure to build the new company. So MCI was going to give me their customer care software capability.
It sounds like a slam dunk. So it's just so unfortunate.
It was all put together. We had agreements with everybody, and then the auction went sideways. And within 2 months, the business was done. I closed the business, and everybody had to go find something else to do.
How much time did you take off in between that and your next thing? And I guess what's your What was your strategy for figuring it out? Because some people would have just gone into kind of a slump.
Yeah, it was easy to do. I went on some boards. I put a consulting company together and went into helping entrepreneurs raise capital. I was very successful learning how to do that. And I had Goldman Sachs as coaches, and I had, I mean, if you saw the companies that Merrill Lynch, I learned the capital markets business from the best of the best. Lehman Brothers.
So are you still doing that business where you're helping entrepreneurs?
Yes, I continued that. Later, it came back. I still do some of that. I do it at the University of Washington. I'm a mentor at the University of Washington CoMotion Innovation Center, and we do mentoring of early stage companies. So we found an introduction to when I was now doing consulting with early stage companies. There was a wireless company up in Canada, and we showed up to see if we could help them with their strategy. And one of the companies that was helping them was from Bechtel. And after they got to know me, they said, we would like to start a venture capital company. Would you be interested in being CEO of a venture capital company? I said, gee, can I use my team? And can it be headquartered in Seattle? And they said, yes. So I took my consultant team and we became venture capital people.
Yeah. And what kinds of companies are you investing in? Like what stage and what sectors? And
well, it was relatively early stage, and we would go out and invest in companies who are going to win licenses in some auction or some form. And we invested in about, I think, 6 companies. And we were interested in Western Europe, the European Union, and essentially in North America, that's where we were focused. So we had an office in London and an office in Seattle. And the people at Bechtel were the best of the best. They treated me really, really well, and they supported. I couldn't have asked for a better team that really bought into the vision of what we were trying to do. And the CEO of Bechtel, Riley Bechtel, was my principal contact at the corporation. And he was wonderful. So we really got to do a lot of interesting things.
And reflecting on your career, because it's been amazing, and I do want to hear about what you're doing right now, because it's super cool. Do you have some lessons that you can share with our listeners around leadership? Like, what are your top 3 leadership attributes that you most admire?
What we did, and I did this a number of times in recruiting people, what I found were people that worked on a mastery of some subject. I found that those people were more adaptive when you went into new markets and innovation. Mm-hmm. So first thing was to look for people who were good at more than one thing, who had skills in 2 areas. The second was really people that are easy to get along with. And the third thing, and they had to be real, and the third thing was they had to be really, really smart. They had to, not necessarily academically, but they had to be really, really smart. And the fourth thing is they had to be hard to kill. And I always looked for people who had reversals in their careers, but would bounce back and would get up and figure out a way to do it again and get back in the game. So those 4 things are principles that I've used many, many times in the ventures that I've put together. And as you said a few minutes ago, I'm engaged in a new venture. There's 2 professors at the University of Washington developed a new platform to build diagnostic products around to detect different diseases. And the National Institutes of Health came to them and gave them grants to develop this technology. And the University of Washington invested. So I was at the and still am at the U in their CoMotion organization. So the CoMotion people asked me if I would take an interview because they needed a CEO because they were, to get their next round of financing, they had to have a CEO in place. So I met with them, and I liked the two guys, and I liked the idea, and it was a big idea. And so I said yes, and so I'm back being CEO again of another early stage company.
That sounds like a blast and so relevant. And imagine you crack this code, right?
We're hard at it. We've developed as a proof of concept that this technology can be a big help to diagnostic medicine. The National Institutes of Health wanted us to focus on a more sensitive form of a COVID test. Mm-hmm. And so we applied our science, the technical team applied their skills around that. And we have developed a much more sensitive COVID test that can be run in 8 minutes. And it really allows you to find people that have the disease but have no symptoms. Mm. Because the over-the-counter test that we all take before you go to a cocktail party or a family gathering, those tests are not that sensitive. And you can have the disease present and you can be infecting other people because you don't know you have it. Mm-hmm. So if you use this test we're developing, we've developed it and it works. It would detect the disease before people have symptoms. And
is it available?
No, we're in the process. We have to get an FDA approval.
Yeah.
Do it.
Well, that's
so
exciting.
We're on the track.
That's exciting.
Yeah,
I love how you've come full circle in your career.
Yeah, I'm back
at it
in the medical device business. Yeah, and it's fun. It's been a long time since I was in the medical device business. The FDA has added an immense amount of regulations, but because of the way the National Institutes of Health funded us, they assigned us an accelerator, and the accelerator has all kinds of consultants in it. And these consultants understand the regulatory requirements, understand fundraising. They have all kinds of people that come to help us in the company, and they don't charge us for any of that. So it's amazing what the National Institutes of Health are doing for us, and it's been terrific. So it's a great way to come back into the medical business because I have all these smart people that bring me up to speed on what happened in all the years I wasn't in the medical business.
Oh yeah, and UW is like at the center of all of it.
Yes.
So given that you have, given all of your personal passions and hobbies, and also just how busy and brilliant you are, I'm curious if you've got hacks on time management or anything you can share about how you set yourself up for a good week and a productive day or week.
Well, yeah, every day is a busy time, but it's really focusing on what has to be done today. I try to be very much in the moment and see what other people in the company or that I'm working with or at the NIH, what do they need to be successful? And those are the things I prioritize first.
Yeah.
So it's really about asking the question, how can I help make them successful? And that's the basis that I make each day about how I'm going to spend my time.
Like servant leadership.
Yeah, it's very much the servant leadership. That book is always stuck with me.
Yeah, and those are the best leaders and the ones who lead with empathy and modeling behavior versus just kind of top down. Yeah, I love that. Okay, my final question for you, John, and thank you again, is what fuels you?
What fuels me is really having a palette to paint on. Is the idea of innovation is really deep inside of me, and that really guides me on what I do next. And I love to learn new things and learn new cultures and learn about new people. So the curiosity is very much a big piece of me.